It is Lagos Talks 91.3, 36 minutes past the hour of 12 this beautiful Monday afternoon. It's time for directions. And like I mentioned, I'm going to be having a very, very special interview, and I'm very honored because I have a special guest in the studio. His Excellency, the former interim president of Liberia, Professor Amos Sawyer. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you for coming into the studio. I'm very pleased that I'm the one who is actually interviewing you, so it's a special honor for me, sir.
Well, I'm sitting in your hot seat, so I'm all yours.
All right. I think it's also safe to say happy belated birthday, because I believe your birthday was on the 15th of June.
Yes, indeed.
Turning 73 years young.
Oh boy, you have done your homework.
Of course I have. Mr. President, how is it for you with birthdays these days? Is it as exciting as it used to be a long time ago? How do you see it? Is it just like a normal day, or?
No, it's still a special day,
okay.
and I try to reflect a bit. Don't worry too much about the mistakes that have been made. You think about the good things you've done and those that you've not done, and how can you do some of those good things before it's too late. So it's also a day for family and friends, you know, just to enjoy the love of your family and your good friends. And that's what I try to do these days.
All right, that is beautiful, sir. I do admire you, and I admire your story a lot because, like you mentioned, I have done my homework.
Yes. So
taking a look back in 1990
yes.
in Liberia, when you were appointed interim president in Liberia, at that time, Liberia was going through a very critical situation. The civil war broke out at that time, and then you were appointed interim president. My question is, how did you feel? Because the presidents before that, Samuel Doe and President Tolbert, they were murdered. So when you were chosen to become president at that moment, how did you feel? Were you allowed to say no? Were you afraid? What were your thoughts?
I was foolhardy. No, it happened actually that I had already taken a job after Mr. Doe booted me out. In fact, he imprisoned me, and after I left prison, I was able to leave the country and took a job at Indiana University in the United States. And I had been at Indiana for about 2 years, but I wanted to teach and to work at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Okay. And as it turned out, I was just on my first assignment at Howard, when I got a call from the ECOWAS authorities to attend this conference in Banjul on Liberia, bringing all the factions and civil society together. So I went into this meeting. It was supposed to be for 2 weeks. Found a fellow colleague to take my courses for 2 weeks, promising the authorities I will be right back in 2 weeks. And then that was it, because we got in, and the peace agreement was written in a way that whoever headed the interim government could not run to be president in the elections that were to follow. And it was a 6-month assignment. And that's how I saw it, a 6-month assignment.
Yes.
I'll do this. I call my folks back and say, it may take a little longer, so I'll miss the semester. So let me just try and do this and then come back to my job. And that was actually the biggest mistake I made in terms of the time frame.
Oh, wow.
Because it took us, on my watch, almost 4 years, with 13 conferences and all of that. But looking back, it was a task that I'm happy I undertook. Didn't completely succeed, but I learned one thing: the importance of building consensus, bringing people on board. Not everybody will be totally happy moving forward, but everybody must have a stake in the future. And I also learned the importance there of this sub-region and the role that ECOWAS, with the leadership of Nigeria, was able to play throughout the 20 plus years of our conflict. So indeed, here we are today, making a bit of progress.
That is absolutely beautiful, Mr. President. Speaking about today, right now, what are you doing to ensure the building of political stability in Liberia? Because it appears that you are the chairman of the Governance Commission. What does that mean for Liberia?
I just stood down as chairman. My tenure ended in January. But the peace agreement of 2003 produced a number of mechanisms to help improve the situation there with peace and better governance. And one of them, of course, was the Elections Commission that came out of the other was the Truth and Reconciliation, and there was a Public Accounts Commission, and then mine, the Governance Commission. And I think the basis for this was that the assumption is true that it was not all just bad people who led us into the conflict. Some was bad institutions. You know, when you do not have procedures and processes laid out right, when there's too much discretionary power and all of this. So we were supposed to review the governmental structure and come up with recommendations. And that is what we've been doing. We came up with a number, including strengthening the General Auditing Commission, making it independent, you know, the bank, making it independent, also the central bank, a number of institutions, strengthening the court and making it independent, the judiciary, asset declaration for political leaders at high levels, that they should do so every 2 years or every 3 years. So those were the things that I was involved in putting into place. These the restructuring of the governmental institutions. Now we have them. They are on paper. The task now is to have them fully implemented. But I just ended my tenure in January. Yes.
Well done, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now let's move on to democracy. Taking a look at what Liberia has experienced, starting from 1990 up until 2006, where I believe democracy returned to Liberia with the election of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. What do you think Africa should have learned or should learn from Liberia's experience up until when democracy returned to Liberia?
I think the Liberian experience prior to the elections, I think, pointed to the damage we can inflict on ourselves. There is no winner in these violent conflicts. The country as a whole suffers. That we should always be aware that in our young democracies we could be one step towards consolidation on the positive side, or we could be one step backwards to conflict on the other side. We have to have a broad national goal in mind. We find in some cases where elections are seen as the basis of deepening democracy, bringing people together, and building from strength to strength. But we see in some other cases democracy can be used as a weapon, you know, against those that have been defeated. I think it is a sad situation when after elections, yes, there's corruption, and we should do something about corruption. But when there's an effort to defame, perhaps even denigrate and expose to danger people who have left office, through all kinds of investigations that are not targeted to improve the situation, but targeted for recrimination. I think it is not a good way to go. Right now, we have in Liberia some efforts to fight corruption. We are learning in Sierra Leone of new reports that are coming out. I think it is important that leaders who have served be honored. In fact, I would like to see a situation where we assist leaders who have left office to live with relevance and dignity, so that there is no problem in getting people to serve their tenure and leave. But if they believe they will be, subject to witch hunt, it is very, very difficult. And I think this is where, the African Union, the ECOWAS, and all of us have a role to play. The stability, democracy requires stability. Yes, you have to have stability. People have to be free. There must be transparency. Don't get me wrong on this. There must be integrity, but all within an environment of stability. So I hope we can make some progress, building from strength to strength, and enlisting the support of all those who have served, as well as those who are currently serving and those in the future who will serve.
All right, speaking about support, Mr. President, how have the ties with Nigeria been as regards support during the trying times that Liberia went through?
Nigeria has stood by Liberia in all of its trials and all of its difficulties when nobody else was there.
Wow.
Yes, and I say this as a proud Liberian, that we have not sufficiently given our due thanks and gratitude to this country. When our civil war broke out, President Jawara of the Gambia was the head of ECOWAS. He made a statement that we cannot stand by when a brother's house is on fire. Stand by and look. We must get involved to douse the flames. And who had the wherewithal to do so? It was Nigeria. It was on the resources. Sure, other helped. Ghana came, Guinea, all of them. But at the foundation, the spinal cord of the ECOWAS intervention in Liberia was Nigeria. I know this because I was a part of the interim government working along with the forces. And the treasure and the blood of Nigerians and other West Africans have helped Liberia to come out of its crisis. When Ebola struck, it was embarrassing for Liberians. In fact, for me personally, because the man who came here and brought the Ebola was called Sawyer.
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you, and the embarrassment goes further, because there was another guy who went someplace else called Duncan. My wife was called Duncan. So anyway, but who came first? It was Nigeria.
Wow.
It was Nigeria. And then Nigeria organized the sub-region, and then the AU. Then toward the tail end, the Americans came with a lot of equipment and all that, but it was almost too late. Their mobilization took so long. So, who is now driving the driving force in ECOWAS? It's Nigeria. Here, the headquarters are here. If we ever have a future for industrialization and transformation, it will be with Nigeria playing a critical role. The integration of West Africa into the single market. Nigeria is the leader in all of this. So I think those of us who live in this part of the world, we have to work closely with Nigeria. And I should say it the other way, that the challenges of Nigeria are challenges for all of us, so that the Nigerian challenges are not just for Nigerians. We have to also look at them and say, oh, brothers, maybe you want to look at it this way,
Yes.
or that way. My sister, look at this way, because we are all affected, and our future are all tied together. You know.
All right, thank you very much for that one, sir. Speaking about the future, there's an argument that the youth, the younger generation, isn't as involved in leadership and governance across Africa. What are your thoughts about that notion, and how do you believe that could be improved upon?
I think of course, the future is for the youth. The future is a future of technology. Those of us who are at my age, we may try to keep to learn some of the modern technology, but it's the younger people who understand what technology can do to serve our needs better, to accelerate our developmental processes. Knowledge now is at everybody's fingertip, especially the young people. They have the energy, and I think you get experience by doing. So I think it is very important that we engage more and more young people in governance, in economic governance, the use of technology, building our systems of integration, improving our productivity, and all the things that we need to do. For my grandfather, going a distance of 100 kilometers was far away. For me, it might have been 300-400 kilometers is far away.
Yes.
Yeah, but for young people, this is nothing. They've bridged this divide. There is indeed a global culture within which there is an African culture based on the technology and all of this, and it is our young people who understand this, and they are the majority of the people of our countries, in some places up to 70%. So if we're really talking about democracy and about our future, and about development, young people must be at the center of the conversation. Yeah.
So speaking on participation in government, in 2006, when Liberia elected President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the world applauded Liberia for electing a qualified female as president. Now, speaking about gender participation in government across Africa, what are your thoughts about that?
I think we have to do more. I come from the premise, and it's statistically supported. Many international organizations have come up with this postulation that the empowerment of women and girls, is the boat that would raise the tide that will raise all boats. That is, whether we talk about improvement in a household, or in the workplace, in education, in whatever it is, because women are the nurturers. They manage the homes. If we talk about democracy, you are talking about 50% of the population, or close to it, a little bit more, a little bit less, from place to place. Healthcare starts right there in the home, with the mother and the children, and that sort of thing. So that is a strategic area of intervention, that is women and children, girls particularly, if we are to maximize the development dividend. And again, I said maximize, not optimize. Because I think we get the most out of this. Now, we have to show this in how we spend our money, our budgeting. what do we do for who are in the workforce? Those, how do we show that in our construction of our communities, we are friendly to families? How do we show in our construction of our communities, of our houses, that we are children or child friendly in where we put things, and how we develop playgrounds and all of this? I think this is the kind of trajectory we should be on. Added to that, of course, is women in governance.
Yes.
We have to have women making decisions. They bring their perspective to the decision-making table. In some parts of Africa, we are doing okay. In others, we are not doing as well. Liberia was a showboat with the president. But if you look into our legislature, it is not as good. Many more women lost in elections this time than they had before. So, resource constraints and other factors. So there has to be an Africa-wide effort. I don't know how it is going on here in Nigeria. I think it might be better.
It could be better.
It could be better. I see many powerful women, in the workforce. So they have to serve as models to others,
Yes.
and I think we need a continent-wide thrust in this.
All right, Mr. President, you did mention earlier that you are done with your tenure as the chairman of the Governance Commission. So what next for you?
Well, I'm semi-retired.
Okay.
Right now I'm engaged in a project on education in Liberia. I'm deepening my interest in education. We just read reports that on the West African exams, on the WAEC, I think only 33% of the Liberian students who took the exams, the common exams, only 33% made a pass. So you can see there's a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
In improving the quality of teachers, of school materials, etc. The other aspect of education that I have some interest in is about grooming or nurturing citizenship, so that young people from a very, very early age get a sense of belonging and ownership of their own country and their developmental processes. Too often we are looking at other people to help us. We're looking at Europe, and there are sometimes I've been at meetings, before you can actually formulate an idea, somebody in a meeting is saying, oh, let's write a proposal, a proposal to the EU. But what is it that we have? How do we see ourselves as owners of our country, of our continent? What does that mean? What responsibility does that thrust on us? And what obligations and what privileges? So we are right now trying to do a series of textbooks for Liberian schools. I'm excited about this. We're working on this now. Just about, simple things about your own self and self-respect, your community, and your role and responsibilities in your family, in your community, in your county, in your nation. So that is one of my present preoccupations. I'm also trying to help at the continental level in the African peer review mechanism. I was a member. I'm not on the panel anymore, but as I said in the conference recently, I am a self-appointed advocate for support for peer review so that we examine ourselves, self-examination, and we call our friends to say, look, see how we are doing. Tell us the truth about how we are doing, that we can improve.
That is absolutely fantastic, Mr.
I think
President.
so.
Before I say goodbye to you, a lot of times we look at our political leaders as individuals that have the responsibility of running the country. They are responsible for their citizens, their safety, security, and all that. Sometimes forgetting that taking off that hat, they are fathers, they are mothers, husbands and wives. And you've been in politics for so many years. How were you able to balance, being a family man and also having such a public political life?
I think the first problem for me was to convince my family, particularly my wife, who doesn't like to hear criticisms about me, to tell her it's okay, don't mind them, you know me, so let's keep let's keep strong together.
Yes.
You know things that I would do and things I never will do, so don't let that ruffle you too much. And then with my children, to find the time and to use every moment we had together, that we enjoy each other. I started at one point with grandchildren who would want to know what is Grandpa doing, and it was difficult to explain. I began to take photographs back to them and say, Grandpa was in this place, he was doing this, talking to these people. It's about making peace and all of that, to get them to gradually understand why he was so often absent and where he was and what he was doing. But that's the strength that propels us, the family life. And I am enjoying more of it now that I, as I say, semi-retired. Yes, that's what I'm doing. But let me just say, what brought me to Nigeria at this point was the funeral of Professor Adebayo Adedeji, long-serving executive secretary of ECA in Addis, a former, I think, Minister of Planning back in General Gowen's government, and one of Africa's most influential economists and experts on development. He is responsible for turning the paradigm that we should look at ourselves and our own resources as the foundation for our development, and we must sustain it through people-centered development. A great man. He passed away at 87 and was buried this weekend in Ijebu Ode.
Yes, Ijebu Ode.
Good. So my condolences to his family and to the people of Nigeria for such a loss.
All right, Mr. President, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Profoundly today.
Thank you so much.
One thing that I'm going to highlight before I say goodbye completely is when you did mention that a lot of times when we're facing issues as Africans, we are very quick to look outside of ourselves, looking for help, maybe thinking that international is better or foreign is better,
Absolutely.
not knowing that we can look within ourselves, and that is what we should start focusing on. Looking within ourselves. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and we wish you the very best in all your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, it is 5 minutes past the hour of 1. It's Lagos Talks 91.3. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that I had with His Excellency, the former interim president of Liberia, Professor Amos Sawyer. There's still a lot more coming your way today on the Midday Show, so don't go anywhere.